So that's John Brennan. I didn't put eyes on the Steele dossier until December of 2016. Okay, then who did? Because a lot of people did put eyes on it because it was used as the bulk of information for a FISA warrant. I don't believe a word that comes out of Brennan's mouth. Brennan has been caught lying, as Clapper has been caught lying. And then Brennan saying in 2016 the CIA, working with foreign and domestic partners to study Russian undermining of elections, not Americans, sharing info with, quote, why didn't they then, therefore, at that moment in the spring of 2016, bring in the Trump campaign and say, this guy loosely associated with you, we've got an eye on? Because it was because they used it like everything else as an opportunity to undermine Trump. And Brennan saying Trump has shown paranoia, insecurity. You know, this is classic spy speak. This is classic diversion. It's 101. I read a book many years ago, a synthesis of Russian mind control techniques. And Clapper, saying Republicans stood in the way of efforts to warn the U.S. And then on The View bragging, oh, yeah, you should be happy we had spies in the campaign. All right, we have that. And, of course, I mentioned in the last hour, Sara Carter's breaking story, which is out today. And she joins us, investigative reporter, and Greg Jarrett, Fox News legal analyst, upcoming book, The Russian Hoax, the illicit scheme to clear Hillary Clinton and frame Donald Trump. Sarah, how are you? Let's start with your story today. I'll let you sum it up in your own words, but this is pretty blockbuster as everything else you've broken.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Sean. I'm actually thinking about what you just said about John Brennan, and what comes to mind is admit nothing, deny everything, and make counter accusations, which is, what he was trained to do. And that's what he continues to do as an operator. You would just never think it would be against the actual legalities of the United States and the malfeasance that probably occurred and allegedly occurred within his organization, as well as the, probably the DNI and the FBI. So this is why they're fighting so hard, tooth and nail, to get this thing buried and to move on, or to make people who are investigating to minimize them. And we saw that with Clapper's statement, but the more they talk, the less people apt are to believe them. And so what the story that I was focused on is putting together this timeline of events and talking to people within the intelligence community, former and current, as well as people within law enforcement, is to the extent of spying that occurred. We're so focused on what just happened in the United States, which is extreme and extraordinary in a sense. We've never seen this in history. But what was happening overseas? I mean, the bulk of this information that they say they gathered on the Trump advisors, George Papadopoulos, Carter Page, look at Sam Clovis, other people that they were looking at the time, was all overseas. A lot of this occurred in England. A lot of information was being shared as early as 2015. So we know that, MI6 or GCHQ, which is like the United States NSA, is collecting data and information on people consistently that are overseas. And that means Americans. I mean, they have the full authority to spy on Americans. My question is, what were they sharing and how were they cooperating with the United States on this investigation? Because it is a counterintelligence investigation. And if it is a counterintelligence investigation with this much sensitivity, because they were looking at the Trump campaign, that means Brennan absolutely knew about it and what was going on.
So Brennan lying again, we've known he's lied before.
Absolutely. I have spoken to people who have sat on principal committee hearings with the NSC, National Security Council. This is definitely something that would be in the purview of the CIA because they're dealing with overseas information. If GCHQ, if other entities, people in Poland, in other parts, Hungary, are sharing information about particular members of the United States political apparatus, if one of the Five Eyes, which those are our partners out there, Great Britain, Australia, New Zealand, if they're sharing information with us, they're sharing it with our intelligence. They are sharing it with the people that are running those operations. Who would those people be? James Clapper, Brennan. The questions we have to be asking ourselves, and the questions that aren't being answered, Sean, is did they ask for this investigation? Were they asking for information on particular Russians that they already knew would be connected, or particular people that they already knew would be connected with members of the Trump campaign or for some reason be
when you put
with them?
When you put all this timeline issue together and coupled with John Solomon's release of this struck page text about that this was being run through the White House, other than Liz, I'll quote it, this is August 5th, 2016, other than Liz, the White House, that would be the Obama White House, is running all of this. And,
right.
That to me is staggering because you've got FBI, you got people in the highest ranks of the FBI, the attorney for Andrew McCabe, Peter Strzok, that is in the forefront of all of this. They're the ones, let me bring Greg Jarrett in, that would know.
Oh, absolutely. And John Brennan has almost no credibility. I laugh every time I see him on the air now because as he spews his hatred toward Donald Trump, he's simply exposing his own motivation for being the instigator of the Trump-Russia collusion hoax. A senior aide to the House Intelligence Committee, who deeply examined what Brennan did involving the dossier, said, and I'll quote, John Brennan did more than anyone to promulgate the dossier. He politicized and effectively weaponized what was false intelligence against Trump. That is backed up by a great many other people.
Great challenge in a story like this that is so multifaceted because there's so many different angles, the Clinton crimes, the Clinton exoneration, no investigation, rigged exoneration. Then, of course, you've got all of the FBI corruption, propping up one candidate, not another candidate, FISA abuse, lying to FISA court judges, the dossier being used as the bulk of application. So the challenge, at least from my point of view and our point of view, as a legal analyst, Greg, as an investigative reporter, Sara, me as a talk show host, which encompasses pretty much all the above to the extent that it's possible, is reminding people of this. And you brought it back up to me last week or the week before, and I've been saying it ever since. We had discussed it many months ago, and that the interrogatories in Great Britain, Christopher Steele himself said it was raw intelligence, maybe 50% chance of being true.
Yeah, and he was forced to admit the truth under penalty of perjury, and his admission was, my dossier ain't worth the paper it's written on. It's sort of a 50-50, oh gee, it's only raw intelligence. Think about this. This is the guy who came up with a phony document that was used as the pretext by the FBI to investigate a presidential candidate that then morphed into an all-encompassing, special counsel probe that has dogged the President of the United States. And at its core, it was a piece of fiction.
Mm-hmm. That is... At
its core, it was disinformation, possibly spewed out by FSB agents working for the Russian government in order to sow chaos in the United States.
It's really a frightening time for the country. It really is. All right, I'll tell you what, we're going to take a break. We have plenty of time today. We are going to keep Greg and Sara for the full hour because there's so much breaking news on all of this. So we promise we'll get it all in. All right, as we continue, Sara Carter out with a breaking news column today, and John Solomon. We'll lay all of this out on Hannity tonight, but the great thing about radio is we have a little bit more time here. I want to go through this timeline issue and why this timeline is so imperative. Sara, you go into great detail here about the timeline.
Yes. Well, I started in late 2015 because what we know now is that according to sources that I've spoken with, as well as it is being reported now in England, that it appears that the British, specifically GCHQ, which collects that raw intelligence, those communications, was already looking, apparently, at people connected to the campaign or people who would be connected to the campaign. And this is really, really important because we have to ask ourselves, who and how did this all begin? When they were collecting that intelligence, was that just on their own? Were they being asked by the U.S. to collect this intelligence? We also know that not only GCHQ, which was in England, was collecting intelligence, raw intelligence, but that other nations were collecting that intelligence. And it's not just Australia, Canada, and New Zealand, which are part of the Five Eyes, but it was other groups that were collecting the intelligence. The Guardian reported that Estonia was one of the countries collecting intelligence. Poland was collecting intelligence. And even Germany was collecting intelligence. And then all of a sudden, I had one of those light bulb moments. And I was thinking about this. They're collecting intelligence. And we know that there's nothing private anymore, that everything you write, that every phone call you make, that everything you do can be collected by someone or something. It doesn't have to be the United States. It could be somebody overseas. But then what happens to that intelligence when it's part of an opposition party? So they collect intelligence, and what I mean is, here the Obama administration, very much behind, everybody's believing Hillary Clinton's going to win. We know what's happening at the time. They're trying to shut down this Hillary Clinton investigation. All of a sudden, they're gathering intelligence on the opposition, or they have access to this intelligence, which actually should be very well guarded and protected. And by the way, the CIA should in no way be involved in any kind of U.S. politics or U.S. investigations. Their purview is outside the United States, and that's by law.
Yeah, all right, we'll stay there. I want to get Greg's take on the timeline when we get back. We'll take a break. We'll come back. We'll continue on the other side of this half hour. We may put a few calls up. We have Greg and Sarah on a lot, and if you have any calls, comments, questions, we'll try and squeeze in a couple of calls on this Friday edition Sean Hannity Show.
Now that we made some money for our sponsors, let's go back to making the liberals crazy. The Handman is back on the radio right now.
All right, 25 till the top of the hour on this Friday. We have North Korea news. We'll get to that. We have corrupt media, bias news, double standard in the media news. Of course, the absolute hatred and vile comments on the left seem to never have any repercussions. We'll get to all of that and much more. But first, we continue our study of Spygate, the deep state, and what is now the single biggest corruption, abuse of power scandal in American history. There's no ambiguity anymore. It's not an issue in question. It's an issue of how it's going to be resolved. We're expecting the IG report to come out sometime next week. We'll get to that in a second. As we were going to break, we continue with Sarah Carter, investigative reporter, Fox News contributor, Greg Jarrett, Fox News legal analyst, and his book is out in July. You can go to Hannity.com and get it now and pre-order it so you're the first to get it. It's called The Russian Hoax, the illicit scheme to clear Hillary Clinton and frame Donald Trump, which pretty much sums up exactly what this abuse of power is all about. And not only do they want to frame Donald Trump, they would like to remove him from office. Anyway, let's go to the important timeline. Both Sarah, John, and their breaking news articles today, Greg, and we've been putting it together. But now the interesting part is these new text messages released put it right up into the upper echelon of the Obama administration. It's now, to me, it's a question I've asked before, but I think now has the greatest amount of urgency and legitimacy, which is, what did they know and when did they know it? And I mean Obama, and I mean Valerie Jarrett, and I mean Samantha Powers, and Ben Rhodes, and Susan Rice, and a lot of others, and Clapper and Brennan.
The sequence of events goes like this. Steele, the ex-MI6 British spy, and by the way, he's not really ex because you're never ex. He's still involved with British intelligence. He comes up with this fictitious dossier. June 20th, contacts immediately the FBI. They travel to London, meet with him. 3 weeks later, they open officially the Trump-Russia investigation. 5 days later, Peter Strzok, counterintelligence chief at the FBI, sends a text to his girlfriend. The White House is running this. And that means Barack Obama, because he's being briefed all along, nearly every day, by John Brennan, the CIA chief, who is, as I mentioned earlier, the chief instigator of all of this, peddling the fictitious dossier. But I think Sarah is right, that we will find out in the months to come that this actually began before the dossier, that foreign agents, British agents, together with the intelligence agencies of the United States, were spying on the Trump campaign, and that they were setting him up. They were the ones in their confidential informants who were feeding information, false information, by the way, to people like Papadopoulos, Sam Clovis, and Carter Page, and then trying to entrap them with that same false information. It's a hideous, obscene plot, but that is likely what will be eventually revealed.
You know, and then again, and it's sort of almost now becoming overwhelming and incontrovertible. Let me look ahead a little bit to next week. And I was a little pissed off when I heard that they might release the IG report as late as Friday of next week. Now, that is going into a weekend, and then that's also rubbing up right against the president and his trip to Singapore, which makes me think that, okay, they're trying to bury the IG report. But now I'm hearing it may come out as early as Tuesday of next week, Sarah.
Yeah, we're hearing two different stories here. We know, and I heard I was contacting people about the IG report because it is very important. It's a 400-page. Remember, I had reported several weeks ago that it was a very long and thorough report. I mean, that's the most detail I was able to get on that IG report, other than what had already been reported out there about Uma Abedin and her emails. But now we're actually hearing that there is a hearing, that the hearing had been postponed from the 5th, which was next week, by the Senate Judiciary Committee, to the 11th. So the hearing has now been postponed with the Senate Judiciary, with Michael Horowitz, the Inspector General, to the 11th. So it seems more than likely that the IG report will not come out until at least the end of next week or right before that.
Okay, before the end of next week, if you had to predict, because what I'm hearing is there's as many as 28 FBI agents and other people involved, investigators, that are willing, if they are in fact subpoenaed by Congress, they can't talk otherwise legally, but if Congress brings them in, and apparently Congress has now identified many of who these people are, and they're chomping at the bit to confirm, yeah, the fix was in, Hillary Clinton committed felonies, it was taken out of the hands of the of special agents, boots on the ground, if you will, rank and file, if you will, and field offices around the country, and they took it and put it in a special category, and they are aghast at the handling of this by the upper echelon, and how we don't have equal justice under the law, and how if they did anything remotely close to what Comey, Clapper, McCabe, and the rest of them may be involved in, or Strzok and Page at least, then they know they would be fired, and they want to tell the truth.
They absolutely do want to tell the truth.
You know, for my book, I interviewed a half a dozen top former officials at the FBI. They all reached the same conclusion, that high-ranking officials at the Bureau put the fix in at the behest of the Obama administration, and they were aghast, and they're still angry to this day at the damage that James Comey, Loretta Lynch, and Barack Obama has done to the integrity and reputation of the FBI. They're absolutely convinced, all of them, that they fixed it for Hillary to be exonerated, and
Can you imagine on the heels of
unfairly targeted Trump.
And the IG report, the IG, you know, he doesn't have the ability himself to subpoena a grand jury. Now, we saw in the case of Andrew McCabe, the IG report comes out, and there's a criminal referral, and now apparently earlier this week, Comey is throwing McCabe down the stairs, and you've got now a circular firing squad emerging amongst the deep state actors, which is going to be interesting to watch. Go ahead.
The problem with the IG is that he has no ability to force people who have left the government service to speak. People like Comey and McCabe and, you know, Baker and Rubicki and the whole gang, Lisa Page. He's got to rely on obtaining documents in public records and speaking to others who spoke to them. That's the flaw with the Inspector General. Having said that, I am optimistic that he has uncovered some of this, you know, odious scheme. And we'll wait and see when the report comes out.
And now that basically now lays out a lot in terms of people's expectations. Other things I'm hearing. So let me go back to you, Sarah. Do you think it's Tuesday or do you think it's Thursday or Friday?
I think it's going to be later in the week. I don't think they're going to release it that soon. I think there was a reason.
So they literally are going to do a weekend dump of an IG report that has gone on nearly 18 months, and they're going to dump it on the eve of the president's trip to perhaps the biggest summit in his presidency with Kim Jong-un. That's what they're going to do?
That's what I suspect. Now, the IG
sounds like they want to bury it.
Well, and that's exactly what I think they're hoping. They can't bury this, so this is just too big. So regardless of if they release it on Tuesday, regardless if they release it on Friday, it's still going to have enough steam. It is going to take a little bit of the wind out of the sails, but it's still going to have enough steam because this is a huge report that journalists all across the country are waiting to see. They want to know the extent of Comey's involvement particularly, and of course McCabe, Peter Strzok, James Baker, Rybicki, you named them all, Lisa Page. And remember, Peter Strzok is still employed by the FBI, and he was interviewed, according to all of the sources that I spoke with, by the IG, as well as Comey, as well as many others. So there is going to be a lot of information in that report and a lot of questions that we hope will be answered with regard to the Hillary Clinton investigation. Unfortunately, though, it was moved up, and that's something that now we have to wait for.
Okay, now let's go what we think we expect in the IG report. I expect James Comey is going to get hit hard. I would suspect that we're going to see a lot of Bruce Orr and Nellie Orr's name in there. Strzok and Page obviously are going to be in there. Are we going to get all of the Strzok Page text messages now, many which have not come out?
I think that's a good possibility that many of them that have been withheld for so long, notwithstanding Congress's demands, may actually be revealed. But I think the important ones so far we do know about, that this is a guy who was heading up both investigations for the FBI and harbored a deep-seated hatred for Trump and an adoration for Hillary Clinton. That by itself smacks of insidious corruption.
Sarah?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree. I don't think all of the Strzok and Page text messages, though, will be redacted or be unredacted. So I think that what's going to happen here is there's a number of them that are considered classified. I think that Congress will and has been able to view them behind closed doors. There's still more that they need to view. There's more documentation than just these text messages, although they're very, very important. I think what we're going to see here and what we're seeing right now, just like you said, Sean, is this battle being waged between these players. There's a struggle. There's a ship that is sinking, and these rats are climbing on top of each other and throwing each other into the water. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that in the upcoming days. And I actually believe that once this report comes out, there will be criminal referrals, like we saw with McCabe. I'm not certain of what those will be or who those will focus on.
If you had to guess, you're as close to this as anybody. Who would you say should be very worried or concerned about it?
I would say James Comey should be very worried. I know that's...
Can I just say one thing? Before he went out on his book tour and wrote his book and his I am great, I am so much superior to everybody else tour, I did warn him. And I don't know who, well, we now know who his three attorneys are, the three people that he leaked the FBI information government documents to. How interesting. He chose all three of them to be his attorney. Then he would then have attorney-client privilege, and apparently I'm the only one in America that doesn't have it, just to make a point. I mean...
Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, if I were to make a guess, I would think, just based on the law and the facts, that Comey should have a criminal referral leveled against him. And I make a powerful argument for that in my book. I mean, Comey is a guy who stole government documents he had no right to do. He leaked some of those documents to third parties. And according to Chairman Grassley of the Judiciary Committee, at least one of those documents was classified. This is exactly what Hillary Clinton did. And so I would expect a criminal referral on that basis alone.
Quick break. We'll come back. We'll have more with Sarah Carter. We'll take a couple of calls when we get back. Right, as we continue an informative hour, Greg Jarrett and Sarah Carter with us. All right, I promised a couple of calls here. Let's start with Carrie in Orlando. Carrie, you're on the Sean Hannity Show. Say hi to Sarah Carter, Greg Jarrett, and your question.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. Thought about Jeff Sessions. It makes no sense the way he's acting or that he instantly recused himself. So I want to know what your thought is. Is it possible they have something on him, they're blackmailing him, that's how they've tied him up?
Anybody want to venture a guess? So you're asking, do you think that you're wondering if the AG is compromised. Anybody want to weigh in on that? Greg?
Well, my impression is that he's simply not very smart and not very skilled. And he was snookered by career officials on the first day that he became Attorney General, and they convinced him to recuse himself by using the wrong regulation that calls for recusal in criminal investigations and prosecutions. This was neither one. This was a counterintelligence probe. That Sessions didn't know the difference speaks to his competency, which is not very high.
Sarah?
That's something that I heard. Yeah, that's something that I've been looking into as well, or even over the past year. And I've heard from a number of sources, even in the DOJ, that he accepted advice from somebody who basically led him down the wrong road, and that he recused himself. But look, there's no excuse here. You're the Attorney General of the United States of America. You are the Attorney General. This is the most important job in the country, by far. I mean, one of the most important positions. And he's basically been recused of everything. It appears that we don't see a lot of him. And your question is one that everyone is asking. Believe me, even here in Washington, even people who know the same information that Greg and I know are asking the same thing.
I'm going to let it go here. Thanks for an informative hour. We'll have more. Both will join us tonight.